This is how to read a house wiring diagram. The whole electrical system of a home on one sheet. Power comes in on the left. The distribution board sits in the middle. And the circuits fan out to every light and socket in the house. Read it in the right order, and it stops looking like a maze. Let me give you the method, then read a real one line by line. Here is the trap. People open a house wiring diagram and try to read the whole thing at once. Do not. A domestic diagram has an order baked into it, and if you follow that order, it reads like a story. Start at the supply, where the power enters the house. Walk through the distribution board, the row of breakers that splits that supply up. Then, and only then, trace one circuit at a time. One lighting circuit, one socket circuit, one dedicated run, from the board out to the point and back. Supply, then board, then one circuit at a time. That is the whole method. Everything else in this video is just detail on those 3 steps. One quick note before we start. Everything I show here is drawn in a free browser editor. No install, no sign up. It is at CircuitDiagramMaker.app, and the link is in the description. Open a real house diagram and trace along with me. Step 1. The supply. Always start here, top left on almost every domestic diagram. The power company brings the line to your house. On a house diagram, it is usually drawn as the utility source, 230 or 240 volts of alternating current. From there, it runs into the meter, which measures what you use. Then into the main switch, sometimes called the main breaker or the main isolator, the one switch that kills power to the whole house. So the first thing you trace on any house wiring diagram is that spine, utility into the meter into the main switch. Get that, and you know where every amp in the building comes from. Step 2. The distribution board. The consumer unit. The DB. Same box, different names. This is the heart of the diagram, and it does one job. It takes that one big supply and splits it into many smaller protected circuits. Read it top to bottom. The main switch feeds a bus bar, a common live bar running through the board. Off that bus bar hang the protective devices. You will see the main breaker, then often an RCD, a residual current device that trips on an earth fault to protect people, and then a row of smaller breakers, the MCBs, 1 per circuit. 20 amp, 16 amp, 10 amp, 6 amp. The number tells you how much that circuit can draw. Each breaker is a labeled doorway out of the board into one circuit. That is all a distribution board is. Step 3. The circuits themselves, fanning out from those breakers. In a house, you will meet 3 families. First, lighting circuits, small breakers, 6 or 10 amp, feeding the ceiling roses and switches. Second, socket circuits, your general power outlets, wired as a ring or as radials, usually on a 20 or 32 amp breaker. And third, the dedicated circuits, one heavy appliance each on its own breaker. The cooker, the geyser or water heater, the shower, the air con. On the diagram, each of these is just a line leaving one breaker and running to its points. When you see a fat conductor going straight to a single box, that is a dedicated circuit. When you see one breaker feeding a chain of sockets, that is a ring or a radial. Name the circuit by its breaker and where it goes. To read any of this, you need the alphabet, the symbols. On a house diagram, there are only a handful you truly need. A switch, a break in the line with a lever. A socket or outlet, the point you plug into. A light, a circle, often with a cross or a little lamp. The distribution board itself, usually a labeled rectangle full of breakers. And the one that ties the whole house together. Earth, the ground symbol, those stacked shrinking lines. Learn those 5 and the crossing rule. A dot means the wires join. No dot means they just pass over. And you can decode almost any domestic sheet. Now the skill that pulls it all together, following a single conductor. Every point in the house is fed by 3, live, neutral, and earth. Live carries the power in, neutral is the return, and earth is the safety path that trips the breaker if something goes wrong. Take a light. Live leaves the board, goes to the switch, and only past the switch does it carry on to the lamp. That is the loop-in idea. Neutral goes straight from the board to the lamp and back. Earth ties the metal parts to the board's earth bar. Take a socket on a ring. Live, neutral, and earth all leave the board, run round the loop through every socket, and return to the board. A complete circle, so current has two ways to reach each point. Put your finger on the breaker, follow live out to the point, and walk neutral back to the board. If you can do that without lifting your finger, you have read the circuit. Here is a real house wiring diagram, open straight in the editor. Watch the method work. Top left, the 230-volt utility supply, into the main MCB. Then the distribution board, splitting into breaker 1, breaker 2, breaker 3. And off each one a circuit, the kitchen outlets, the lighting, the general outlets. Everything tied back to the earth bus along the bottom. Supply, board, circuits, earth. Exactly the order we practiced. Now a closer look at just the board, a consumer unit on its own sheet. Same story, zoomed in. The utility comes in through the main breaker onto the bar. Then each protective device, here drawn as fuses, hands off to one circuit. The kitchen, the lighting, a bedroom. When you can read the board on its own, the full house diagram is just this, repeated outward. Your turn. Let us build a tiny domestic circuit from scratch. Blank canvas. I search the symbol library and tap parts onto the grid. A meter for the incoming supply. A breaker standing in for the board. An outlet, a light, and an earth. These come from the free do-it-yourself pack the guest editor gives you. Then the wires. Press W, click one pin, click the next, and the wire snaps in with square corners. Move apart, and every wire follows. That is how these diagrams are drawn. When the drawing is done, it has to leave the screen. One click opens the export menu. PNG is free, good enough to print and pin next to the board, or send to whoever is doing the work. Vector formats, PDF, SVG, and DXF sit on the paid plans. That is the honest business model, said plainly. This tool is ours. 4 clean domestic wiring diagrams you can share and mark up. It is genuinely good and free to start. And you do not have to start from a blank page. The library has thousands of real wiring diagrams, house layouts, consumer units, lighting circuits, socket rings. Open any of them, hit edit, and trace the loops yourself. 10 minutes of tracing a real house diagram teaches more than an hour of watching me. So that is how to read a house wiring diagram, start to finish. Start at the supply, utility, meter, main switch. Work through the distribution board, the main breaker, the RCD, the row of MCBs. Then trace one circuit at a time, lighting, sockets, and the dedicated runs, following live out and neutral back, with earth tying it all together. Open a real house diagram in the free editor and trace it yourself. It is at CircuitDiagramMaker.app. No install, no card. Subscribe for a new wiring video every week. See you in the next one.